Hello, everyone. Thank you, AIPH, for having me here. Um, I'll start by looking at this contrast between cities and nature in cities. And I'm going to talk about that and some of the social, technological, and ecological innovation that is maybe limiting our uptake of nature-based solutions as part of the naturing. Um, these are all recent nature-based solutions projects or greening projects, if you will. And they're different. Some you have a green wall, you have a parking spot which has been converted into a garden, you have a public garden, playgrounds, and so on. Why do we do this? Clearly, we spend a lot of money on this. Governments, even the private sector, spends a lot of money on this. But we do it because we see value in mainstreaming nature. We see value to people, to the well-being of communities. There could also be some benefits to biodiversity, but I would like, and this is sort of the link there between the biosphere, nature, and society and the economy here represented through the SDGs. So, but there's a few questions we need to ask. How effective are we in giving rise to benefits to biodiversity? Do we really have gains in biodiversity? Do we really have improvement in the well-being of people? Are we prioritizing the most effective forms of urban greening? Or is it more based on what a few people think, for example, as being most effective? So I'll start first by looking at my recent work on assessing nature-based solutions and assessing the benefits that we get from nature-based solutions. And I'll start by looking at the spatial distribution of the benefits that we get from nature. And I'll look at the place I live in. This is a small island state. It's Malta. It's in the center of the Mediterranean. It's a semi-arid climate, becoming more arid. We have lots of fluctuations and quite hot. Also very high density, the highest urban density on average in the EU, so the smallest member state, but also the one with the highest population density. And at the same time, in a hotspot of biodiversity. So some years ago, we started looking at the benefits that we get from nature. We call these ecosystem services. And here you have a representation of a few of these. This is a published article, which you can see from here at the bottom, but which you can see a representation of a few of these here. And well, if you look at what's happening there in those figures, you can see that green infrastructure is inversely related to ecosystem service capacity, the capacity of ecosystems to provide benefits. And vice versa, where you have a lot of people, you have less nature, you have less benefits that we get from nature. And clearly this is a mismatch that we need to tackle. But this is also a question of perspective. This is the same island, but now we're looking at the flow of benefits. How much people use these benefits. And here we're looking at air quality improvement based on the removal of NO2 by ecosystems. And you see that in some places, close to the whiter areas, there's dark blue. Why? Because in these places is also where we have the most removal of pollutants, because this is where you have the most air pollution. And we can do this for other things as well. We can do it for nature-based recreation. In 2018 again, we used geocaching, which is a popular treasure hunt game, basically. And we look at where these geocaches, these treasures are placed, and how much people enjoy looking for these geocaches. And most of them were actually in urban. So more in urban sites as opposed to marine, as opposed to coastal, or as opposed to semi-natural ecosystems. And with colleagues, I've been looking at other crowdsourced data. So this is data from Flickr and iNaturalist. iNaturalist is a citizen science tool for recording biodiversity by people, and Flickr is a popular photography social media platform. And we looked at where these are. Again, you see most of these spots are actually close to the cities, and not in nice agricultural areas or nice nice coastal areas. There's some of that, but a lot of the points are actually recorded in the urban. This is a PCA in 3 dimension. Don't think you see the pointer, but over here you see urban, and you can see how these arrows are pointing in the direction of the urban. So clearly there is value in having nature in cities. And then we focused on urban and urban ecosystem services. So we mapped all the green infrastructure, I mean up to the one or a few trees in the main urban area. This is the Grand Harbour. The Grand Harbour is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's where most of the population lives today. The population density there is much higher, 7,000 more or less per square kilometer. In some places, 15,000, 18,000 per square kilometer. And we mapped everything. We mapped the ecosystem types, urban ecosystem types. We looked at soil sealing, at tree covers and tree cover, and so on. And we mapped also and assessed the ecosystem services. And we looked at tree cover. There's a lot of white here. This is a place which is tree-less, more or less, give or take. Okay, there's some trees, but not a lot of trees. And for regulating services, for air quality improvement, local climate regulation, noise abatement, it seems there that there's a very strong relationship. If there's tree cover, you tend to get these regulating benefits. But we also looked at culture, and so this link with tree cover is very important for regulating services. And we also looked at the benefits in terms of the type of green space. And what we did differently was we looked at private green space as well. So we looked at trees in private gardens. And because trees were so important, and space is so limited, okay? So you have a lot of trees in private gardens, and this means that they are more effective, 4 times more effective in giving rise to these regulating benefits when compared to public spaces. So with land being limited, and with tree cover being so important and land being so important, here we could have an issue of social justice, and I'm going to mention that later on as well. But as opposed to regulating services, the cultural benefits that we get from nature, the aesthetics, the recreational, the place-based benefits that we get from nature are more diverse. So we don't associate these cultural benefits just with tree cover. It's more related to the type of urban ecosystem typology types that we have there. And this is something that we have published a few years ago. Also, who benefits? So we looked at who benefits. Who are the groups in society that benefit most? And this is a correlation. If you see blue, it means you are closer to green spaces. So you are further away to green spaces having high ecosystem services. If it's red, it means it's negatively related, so you live closer to these spaces. And you see that in this upper box here, independent of population density, if you have no schooling, if you are disabled, if you are elderly, so you are at a relative disadvantage, you tend to live further away from the spaces having higher ecosystem services. And this is a social environmental justice issue. Population density is there in the second box. So these effects are not happening because of population density, but because of difference in the groups and in the neighborhoods, basically. So we have three clusters. The clusters are represented by the boxes. There's, of course, more elements and more access to justice. And here we're just talking about distributional justice, but we should also be talking about the procedural and the interactional justice. So how do people relate to these places and how much are they involved in decision making? And now I'd like to mention nature-based solution because this is more or less the context within which we are working. We've already defined nature-based solutions, so I'm going to skip this slide. And I'm also going to skip this slide, which is showing the diversity of nature-based solutions. Okay? So I was coordinating a Horizon 2020 project until 2 years ago. And in this project, we wanted to share experiences of nature-based solutions. We were collaborating with 5 universities and organizations from Europe. And first we started looking at nature-based solutions in one place, and then we tried to expand this to case studies from the Mediterranean region. And for each of these case studies, we collected information that looks like this. What are the societal challenges that you are addressing? Which are the benefits that you have associated with this nature-based solution? Which are the SDGs? And so on. And we map these on a heat map. And you can see how on the x-axis there, okay, you have the NBS category, nature-based solution category. On the y-axis, you have the challenge addressed. There's some blue and green in this heat map, right? Which is showing that there's a lot of experience with this, but a lot of yellow, okay? Which is showing that there's a lot of gaps as well. So for some challenges, we haven't started to address these using nature-based solutions. This is a network analysis, which I'm going to skip. Then this is the benefits. So then we ask, what are the benefits? There's more blue and green. So whoever implemented those nature-based solutions associated more benefits to implementing nature-based solutions than originally thought of when addressing challenges, which are the SDGs. So you see, there's some SDGs which are well addressed through nature-based solutions, others which are not very well addressed. And then we asked stakeholders, which are the enablers and barriers towards NBS? And if it's a cross, it's a barrier, okay? And we used this framework that you can see up there, and which is being pointed from a published article. So we looked at perceptions, and first we start with perceptions. There's a lot of barriers there. So yes, we have the technology, but we need to talk about the political will. We need to talk about the will of the communities to implement nature-based solutions, okay? We need to address the concern that NBS are high-cost alternatives, okay? Now, this is about institutions, the readiness of institutions to implement nature-based solutions. Here you have more enablers, okay, but also a lot of barriers. Lack of cost-benefit analysis, lack of interdisciplinary approaches, everyone working in his own department, okay? But you see also some benefits, for example, for the public sector, some links to research and innovation, and guidance mostly at regional scale. But when it comes to the scale of implementation, the local scale, a lot of gaps, okay? And here is about infrastructure. Again, our stakeholders said, we don't have a lot of space. We don't have a lot of positive examples of NBS, okay? How do we integrate NBS in other infrastructure projects? So a lot of this was coming up. Addressing the challenges, I'm conscious I'm running out of time, so I'm going to show a few case studies where we try to address these enablers and barriers. This is a paper which we published last year, and here we were looking at a number of ecosystem services which we mapped the demand for. So based on the population structure, what is the demand for runoff regulation, noise reduction, air pollution regulation, and so on. And then based on these and the typology of NBS, which is shown in the upper table there, but you cannot see it, of course, we actually mapped the open spaces and identified the most suitable NBS according to the demand for specific services. We're doing more on this, so now we have 2 Horizon Europe projects. We're looking at policy impact, so we're working with 4 cities in the project Go Green Next, and looking at the impacts of nature-based solutions on these projects and developing city dashboards. We're developing academies for training as well and for working with stakeholders. And on the other side, in the project Go Green Routes, for example, we've been looking at the assessment of the nature-based solutions on both biodiversity and well-being. My last couple of slides, and this is about working with communities. We've asked communities in one of the study sites, who do you think it should be the organization or institution that is actually leading nature-based solutions, that is developing nature-based solutions? And you can see here how most of the time is the locality, the municipality. It's not a question of, I want to do this, or my community wants to do this. And a lot of this is happening. But then if you ask people, would you like to collaborate? So it's a matter of people. Would you like to do this? Would you like to be involved in the design, in the objective setting, and so on? Most of them will actually say yes. So it's also a matter of working with this perception that the greening of cities is something which should be done by the local government or the government. And this is one project. So it's an EIT project, New European Bauhaus project. We did everything. So we had co-design with the community involving architects, landscape architects, ecologists, and so on. We try to create awareness about biodiversity in city. This is the Cotonera area of Malta, one of the oldest and densest places. And we did, I don't know, bioblids for community. We did pop-up park. So we went there and we said, how would you like to see this place changing? And I said, well, we have this great gray square. Could you make it green? And we developed a pop-up park, which was meant to stay there for a couple of weeks, but is still there 1.5 years later. Of course, it shouldn't be there, but they wanted to be there, and they are maintaining it. And based on this, we also have published and short set of guidelines or recommendations about how to engage with communities for what we call nature-based placemaking, based on our experience. And finally, my conclusions. I think it's important to think about nature-based solutions from the perspective of how they lead to the well-being of communities, but it's also very, very, very important to talk about biodiversity. Otherwise, our reason or rationale for including nature-based solutions no longer makes any sense. We want to work with nature because nature is about giving benefits to people, and also because nature has inherent value in itself. But clearly, to do that, we need better measures of both biodiversity, ecosystem services, and the benefits we get from nature. Of course, there's key challenges, key barriers. We cannot solve this through planting trees, as was being said earlier on, through technology. We have to work with community, and we have to think about this problem of greening cities and climate adaptation in terms of social innovation. How do we break this vicious cycle that we are in and bring in green as part of our life, bring in nature as part of our life? And then I mentioned that we have, I think one of the best way of doing this is actually showing what works. And through various projects, in many cases EU-funded projects, we have managed to bring communities together, green sites. Sometimes, of course, you have mishaps, you have things that could have gone better, but it's also a learning experience. It's also part of the social innovation that is happening in cities. That's it. Thank you very much.